So let's talk through the big Warhammer 40k releases this weekend, with details, prices and gameplay of the Space Wolf kit, and as we go through, see how Games Workshop's rules and prices translate into model sales, with a look at which of the new releases are popular and which might be left on the shelf. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought we'd take one last look at the big Space Wars release, talk about the prices, people's reception to the models, and ultimately which ones people are buying and which ones they aren't. This weekend's a relatively big Warhammer 40k release, plenty of kits going live that haven't been available to buy before, models going for pre-order on the 28th of June, and then going on for sale in store on the 12th of July. Seemingly the Space Marine drop pods have been bundled in alongside the Space Wolves, no big wider release of generic Space Marines it would seem for them, and then we've got Codex Space Wolves and the accompanying bits, then 9 Space Wolf new kits, a whole bunch of characters and 4 squads, a made to order Imperial Shrine statue, and Dawn of Fire the Silent King. It's going to be interesting to see the final Space Wolf points go live, and then to see what sort of list people choose to take when they put them into tournaments. If you're looking to pick up any of these new releases, if you're in Canada, the channel's video sponsor Toy Snowman might be able to help you there. They have 15% off. I'll talk about them more a little bit later, but otherwise if you wanted to support Warspecs Tactics with any purchases, if you're making them around the world, there's the channel's affiliate discount retailers linked in the video description. Element Games for 15% off in the UK, and there's a couple of other alternative UK ones there. Gap Games for 21% in Australia. Toy Snowman on Fenris Workshop in Canada, Wargame Portal for 15% off in the USA, and Tash and Geldeep for 16% off in the EU. Here are the times when the box set should be going live around the world. Individual stores might sell out of individual things, though hopefully there should be no enormous amount of things that are just out of stock and gone for good, as these are all more normal range releases. In any case, a big thank you to anyone helping out by any purchases down from those links. It does help keep the videos coming. Going through the releases, obviously there's the Space Wolf Codex release. This one's going to be £20 or $35, though I feel like this one's maybe not going to be a massively hot item this weekend, just because a whole load of Space Wolf players, if you were collecting the faction at the moment, there's a pretty reasonable chance that you could have either picked it up from the army box set, or from someone reselling it who had picked up multiple copies of that box. As we know though, it's got the 3 detachments in it, plus 20 datasheets, unfortunately taking a few things out of the Codex. Alongside that, there's the usual limited edition version, plus faction dice and datasheet cards. They're around about £20 or $35 normally. Getting into the meat of it though, let's talk about those miniature releases. I thought we could go through them in order of which ones are looking most popular and which ones are looking least. It does look like the very least popular for this weekend's releases are the standard troops though, the Blood Claws and the Grey Hunters. By my estimates, around about 1.5% of Warhammer 40k collectors looking to pick them up, and their popularity is certainly lower due to them appearing in the army set, so a good number of Space Wolves players will already have those, potentially even multiple copies if they're wanted, plus neither of their rules are looking super standard I'd say. The models have been generally fairly well received as nice rank and file Space Wolves, fairly standard issue Primaris but with some Space Wolf flair, the Blood Claws running in all very quickly with their chainswords, the Grey Hunters having some chainsaw and bolt carbine action, looking a little bit more stoic and less dynamic perhaps. Price-wise, they're both $62, £40 or €51, the same price as Intercessors, which is slightly good news. Some recent 10-model Marine box sets have been a bit more like that, like the Emperor's Children, Tormentors and Infractors. The Grey Hunters have their OC3, rapid-fire 3 bolt carbines, and the sort of Assault Intercessor damage style roll. Being locked into taking units of 10 of them isn't ideal though. The Blood Claws I think are maybe a bit more hopeful just due to them being so many fewer points. They're 135 points to put on the board, so some of the cheapest Space Marines that you can field. Again, they're not going to do too much besides things like light infantry, but they can rush in fast with advance and charge and maybe flip an objective for a turn. Next up is the other less popular kits of the weekend. We've got the Wolfguard Battle Leader and the Wolf Priest. Again, I suspect both suppressed a bit, due to people already having some copies of them if they wanted them. Looks like the Wolf Priest is maybe significantly more popular though. I guess people did particularly like his sculpt, maybe there's a fair few people wanting to pick him up as a painting project. For those ones, the Battle Leader is the flexible generic character for the Space Wolves, with a choice of Thunderhammer, Power Sword, Storm Shield or Plasma Pistol. He's the same price as standard Captains at $42 or £26. For his buffs, he gives you sustained hits 1 and reroll 1s to hit if you're close up to your target, and perhaps a surprisingly fighting melee profile as well for what should be a lieutenant equivalent in theory. 5 attacks with a Thunderhammer with devastating wounds. I'd probably take the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield personally. Looks like he's going to be at least a fairly strong choice in game for leading Space Wolf unique units. The Wolf Priest has a pretty fun and intimidating model as well. Great big robes and furs, and choice of a fair few fun heads, either a wolf skull or some impressive facial hair. He's $40 or £25, so a tiny bit cheaper, more of a support character kind of price tag. In game, he does normal chaplain things with a +1 to wound, and also allows you to resurrect a slain bodyguard unit. So it's like on paper he could be quite nice with the Wolfguard head takers with a big unit of those, at least some chance to get a 3 wound model back if you happen to get them damaged but not destroyed outright. Seems like he'd be pretty solidly rivaling with the Wolfguard battle leader for the best choice to lead fighty Space Wolf melee units. Next up, it does seem that basically everything that wasn't in the army set is less sought after than the things that were out of it. The Wolfguard head takers are the unit that most people want to pick up out of that box though with another copy of. I guess they're a unit that you might want in good numbers, potentially expanding the 3 of them in the box up to a set of 6. In their box set, you get 3 veteran Space Wolves, either equipped with Axe and Shield or Axe and Sword, one of Games Workshop's 3 model elite box sets, but these guys also come with bonus Hunting Wolves as well, which separates from the unit when they're deployed. I feel like they do a pretty great job of being a sort of Space Wolves Fighting Elite's Blade Guard equivalent. The price on these guys is $65 or £42.50, maybe a little bit more than what you'd hope for. But I guess at least in terms of plastic, maybe compares well to things like Inner Circle Companions, who don't really cost all that much less, and you only get the infantry models, not the bonus wolves. You still don't get an enormous amount of points for the money though. In game, they maybe look like one of the best hopes for the Wolfguard Battle Leader or the Wolf Priest to lead maybe. 3 wounds and moving fast at 7 inches, and then a whole flurry of strength 5 and damage 2 attacks, maybe a big 6 of them if you give up the Storm Shield. Feels like they could be an interesting enough unit both with or without. The Wolves can be a super cheap interference unit to go their own way, and they also get a Headhunter's roll to get devastating wounds against their quarry. I feel like for their points cost they're going to be a pretty dangerous unit and could use plenty of the detachment rules well enough. Before we move onwards and up the list, I'll just give a quick shout out to Toy Snowman, the video sponsor. They're a gaming store based in Montreal in Canada and can be one place to get Warhammer at a discount if you're living over there, typically selling Warhammer models at 15% off Games Workshop's prices. If you're looking to order some 40k models in, their web store is linked down in the video description. It's fairly easy to search and navigate, and they do all the normal things that you'd usually expect of online discount retailers. Free shipping over $150 Canadian, they've got a reward points loyalty program for some bonus discounts there, and back orders if they don't have any of the Games Workshop items in stock. You can message this email address to ask them to order it in for you. Here's their address of their store if you wanted to check it out and happen to live nearby. They've got a huge amount of stock of hobby things beyond 40k. And they will of course be aiming to get good numbers of these Space Wolf releases in stock this weekend, including all the popular stuff on the upper end of this list. Obviously fingers crossed Games Workshop give them good amounts. In any case though, feel free to check them out, link down in the video description, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring this one. Let's venture on into the more popular releases though, and it seems that the next most sought after thing was the Imperial Shrine statue, around about 4% of 40k hobbyists looking to pick one up. This one's being billed as Killzone Upgrade Shrine Statue, and it's basically the statue that originally was from the Adeptus Sororitas Battle Sanctum, and it's going to be done as a made-to-order type thing, so you place an order, then Games Workshop ships it to you in 180 days or so after they've made it. I've not seen confirmed pricing for this one yet, but might be around about £37 or $60 if it's the same as their Compound Siege one. It certainly was a pretty popular draw to the previous Kill Team box set. Into the new Space Wolf things though, and they've got 4 new kits that have not been able to be bought before this weekend. And first up, it looks like the next most popular are the 2 heroes that aren't the Chapter Master, Jarl Stormcaller with 4.3% of people looking to pick him up, and Arjak Rockfist with 4.8%. Both of these guys were pretty fun, well-received sculpts. Arjak's the personal champion of Logan Grimnar, an enormous Space Marine and Terminator armor fighting with Thunderhammer and Shield. He's able to fling Foe Hammer at his foe and have it teleport back to his hand, or very Thor and Mjolnir style. A fairly straightforward update of his previous miniature, and quite nicely done I think. Both of these guys are Games Workshop standard price for Epic Heroes, $45 or £28, as ever characters tending to be not the best in terms of the amount of plastic for the money, though the sculpts are fun ones in my opinion. For Arjak's rules, he's got some mighty damage 3 attacks with anti-keywords and precision, and he can re-roll hits and wounds against characters, so he's going to be utterly lethal if you can engage a squad with an enemy champion in it. Hopefully he should be able to lay them low. He can also allow Terminators to fight in death. He seems usable enough for the points, though doesn't really amp up the squad's damage in any other way besides his own profiles. Otherwise, we've got Jarl Stormcaller, again really quite a fun model this one, and it was basically updated to take him out of Terminator armor to make him another power armored character unit. It does keep quite a lot of the same trappings though, the same staff of the Stormcaller, the great big wolf pelt over his psychic hood. Pretty fun to see his staff making the rock sword levitate around it with some psychic energy there, and his Cyber Raven taking flight. His rules maybe don't feel quite so standout to me. He has some anti-infantry shooting attacks, grants the assault keyword and auto-advance 6 inches to his unit, but only leads dedicated Space Wolf units, none of which have any particularly convincing firepower. I guess he could advance and charge quite a long way with Blood Claws or something. And then his buffing rule is a bit of a curious one that's not overly helpful in my opinion, decreasing the range on a bunch of units. I'd be kind of surprised if he sees much play in Strong List. I'm not sure if that could be one of the factors behind him being the least popular out of the new Space Wolf kits. Otherwise, moving onwards and upwards, we have the Wolfguard Terminators, around about 5% of you wanting to pick them up. It generally looks like a solidly popular release for the Space Wolves. For these guys you get 5 Terminators, nice big beefy profiles similar to the ones that launched at the start of 10th edition. They're all equipped with mastercrafted power weapons, and then the option between a Stormbolter or Storm Shield for extra defense or a ranged attack. One gets a great weapon, and one gets an assault cannon and power fist. Games Workshop had an article recently where they showcased a fair few of the different head sculpts for them. They do have a pretty impressive amount of different long flowing beards that you can give them if you'd like to. And seems their price tag is the same as the regular Terminators, £42 or $65. Maybe not a terrible one in terms of plastic and points on the board. It could have been the same price as Deathwing Knights as a faction unique Terminator. Fortunately they were a bit cheaper than those though. I bear in mind that they'll be available in the Combat Patrol box set. In-game, Terminators haven't really had the best time of it in 10th edition for standard Loyalist ones. For these ones I'd take the power weapons and the storm shields, giving them a wounds characteristic of 4, and they get an inbuilt -1 to wound if they're attacked by things that are strength 6 or higher. And it does feel like they'd be solidly tanky for the cost. I feel like they might need some help against tougher stuff though, maybe some way to get lethal hits or a character that's got a higher strength than the unit. They're mainly going to be hitting with a bunch of strength 5 and damage 2 attacks, which isn't enormously general purpose. I guess they might like Saga of the Beast Slayer potentially. I'm genuinely a bit unsure as to how strong they're going to be in competitive Space Wolf lists. Will be interesting to see how much they're used. Next up on the numbers, I thought I'd include the Space Wolf Combat Patrol, which looks like it's got a similar amount of interest to the Wolfguard Terminators. I'd guess that's maybe dividing the interest for them a bit. A lot of people might have decided not to pick up the Wolfguard Terminators and instead wait for that box set. It seems to be Games Workshop's normal thing to delay the Combat Patrol box set until at least 2 weeks later, and maybe a bit more. They seem to do this whenever there's new models in the box set, so the presence of those ones here likely is the main reason that it hasn't come out alongside the rest. In the box set there's a Wolfguard Battle Leader, 10 Blood Claws, 5 Wolfen and 5 Wolfguard Terminators. It looks like it should be around about 470 points in the box or thereabouts, at a discount of roughly 27%. That's fairly in line with Games Workshop's norms for combat patrols these days. In general, the Combat Patrol box set has been pretty well received. When I asked you to rank it out of 5, you gave it a 3.5 out of 5. That does feel like it puts it on the upper end for discount box value over the course of 10th edition. That feels kind of in line with things like the recent World Eaters Combat Patrol, kind of similar to Death Guard and Emperor's Children, and better than quite a lot of other ones that have released over 10th. I feel like it'll be a helpful enough box. Basically the default faction special character, some standard troops, and then 2 squads of fighting elites. Certainly feels better than the vast majority of early 10th edition ones. Finally though, getting into the 2 most popular releases of the weekend, first up we have Logan Grimnar. It does seem that, maybe as you might predict, he does look like he's the single most popular one of the Space Wolf releases, a fairly big 6 or 7% worth of hobbyists wanting to pick up the old wolf. His model maybe did feel like it was one of the ones that had the most excitement around it. The new miniature for Logan Grimnar certainly cuts an imposing figure, standing on a great big rocky outcrop, flanked by 2 wolves and glowering down at the enemy. I feel like he's particularly been done a good service by the heavy metal painters there, with his face all wreathed in shadow like that. They've done some fun details on the Axe Morkai as well. I feel like his price was maybe a bit on the unfortunate side though. It looks like with the addition of his rocky outcrop and wolves on the base, they seem to have decided that he's around about the same sort of size as a Primarch and is going to be priced as one. He's $70, so it should be £44 or €55, so that's basically the exact same price as Rabute Gilliman of the Ultramarines or Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels. I'm not sure I was necessarily expecting way less than this, but I was probably guessing more sort of like Lord Solar prices perhaps, who felt like a good analogue with a character with a big built-up base. In-game, he's perhaps surprisingly cheap on the points still, 110 points for his rules. He does hit pretty hard in melee as you'd expect, 6 attacks at strength 8 and damage 3 with a bunch of wolf attacks to back it up. I feel like they're maybe not too sure as to what to do with his buffing rules. They swap them out completely for a command point or a debuff and a first turn reserves arrival, but one that won't necessarily guarantee him charges turn 1 or anything like that. Overall feels a bit on the unusual side, and again will be interesting to see whether or not he's played lots in competitive play. Feels like it might be tempting just to use him on his own and deep strike solo turn 1. He certainly has enough threat to make his presence felt, though dropping in with a whole bunch of Wolfguard Terminators certainly feels like an intimidating way to take the midboard. In any case, he looks like he's the most sought after Space Wolves release this weekend. That just leaves us with one though, and it looks like the drop pod is at the top. Just over 8% of people wanting to pick up the new Space Marine ones. Maybe not too surprising that they might beat out the Space Wolves, given that they're new miniatures that can be relevant to a whole bunch of different Space Marine factions, all the other Divergent chapters, and the core codex as well. The new drop pods maybe don't look enormously different to the old ones, though they had a few changes that not everyone liked. Basically, Games Workshop have shifted them from being more sort of an interactive model with opening and closing the doors to more sort of a static terrain piece, so the doors are always modelled down, and there's no auto weapon system on them anymore. The pods are just literally going to be set up on the board as if they'd already made impact. I think the reason for that was because the old kits were not really the easiest to build. It could be a bit awkward trying to line up a 5-way different symmetry at the same time and keep everything neat and keep the doors opening and closing. It feels like people have been a bit mixed on them, some people really not liking the more static element of them, but plenty of people not having any great love for the existing kit either. It does look like they're going to be cheaper per pod at least. They're $80 for the two of them, so it should be around about £50 or €65 for the translation of that via Games Workshop prices. That means, say, you would have £25 per pod rather than the £34 that they were previously. Maybe not the worst of a bit of multi-buy discount if the opening and closing thing doesn't really trouble you too much. They can be assembled with a whole bunch of debris around them too, to sort of show them having made impact, though that can be left off if it's desired. It seems that they're going to get a new Warhammer 40k datasheet, which could be interesting enough. To be quite cool if they did actually make them a bit more relevant for Space Marines again. They haven't really been super strong recently. This one's their current one, basically allowing a first turn deep strike, and then they just sit there basically having a little bit of OC and a small gun. If they did change up the datasheet, I guess they'd get rid of the gun. And I kind of wonder whether they'd still give them any OC or not. I feel like lots of automated things just don't tend to get that in later 10th, and I guess there won't be any rules complexity regarding doors being open or closed or where the footprint is or anything like that. They said there was going to be something to spell that out on the datasheets. In any case, I'll certainly give a look over it once we get rules for it. Finally, here's a ranking of Space Wolf model looks that I did on some polls recently as well. Feels like the ones that people want to pick up at least roughly follow how much people like the appearance of them, Logan Grimnar being right at the top, the Wolf Priest and the Head Takers both being popular, though I guess they're both really quite depressed as lots of people already have them from the army set. The battle line may be generating a little bit less excitement compared with some of them. In any case though, let me know your takes on the Space Wolf release. Which of these might you be tempted to pick up, if any? I look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the video description. As mentioned, if you were looking to pick anything up, then check out the channel affiliate discount retailers linked in the video description if you'd like to help support. There's ones that cover a whole bunch of countries linked down below. And of course a massive thank you to Toy Snowman for sponsoring the video. Feel free to check them out if you're over in Canada. In any case though, I'll leave that there for now. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you've been enjoying the videos on the channel, Auspex Tactics also has a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support, with a few rewards for channel backers such as seeing videos earlier and things. In any case though, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.